Hope you're doing well. Double B, good morning, champs. Love it. Love it. Champs is a good name. Good morning, T-Dog Yo-Yo. Good morning, Bitcoiners. Ben. Good morning, BTC Hoplites. Like it. Bitcoin is beautiful. So is the sun. We'll be acknowledging both in 1 minute. Oh, P-Man Van in Mexico. Sun's up. I'm in Mexico. Bitcoin also running in Mexico. P-Man Van letting us know. That's good to know. That's good to know. We got to make sure it's running everywhere, right? Mexico, America, China. We're going to be talking about China today. Can anyone still say China without hearing Trump say it? I can't. I'm all in on the Trump pronunciation of China. Bitcoin is still running. It's true. You're stealing my big reveal. My big reveal. Greg, best thumbs in the game. Thanks, Greg. I appreciate it. Today was pretty fun. I have bricks, bricking a phone. That's what I went for today. Bricked, I tried to get them smashing the building a bit, but I just couldn't prompt it into existence today. It wasn't giving me the spins that I needed. Beaumatin, good morning, Bitcoiners. B for victory. Love it. Bud. Morning, Bitcoiners. Tommy asks, GOP debate tonight. Yeah, we're going to talk about that. I'm a GOP debate watcher, I think. Good morning from bed. Kevin's sleeping in. You do it, my man. This show works in bed too. Don't sweat it. Habib, good morning, everyone. And Bitcoin Graffiti here with his cup of coffee. So let's just get down to it, right? We can acknowledge we've got a maximum sunrise, right? So I'm sitting here on the east coast of North America, and it was a beautiful sunrise. Not a cloud in the sky today. Gorgeous late summer day. And Bitcoin, everyone, like we heard, it's running in Mexico. I have no confirmations if it's running in Antarctica, but I bet it is. All right. I bet all those people down in Antarctica can use Bitcoin right now. So all that's left for us to do is have a coffee and talk about what is new. Now I have a excellent edition of Moscow time today, even though we're going to be talking about the US debates, China, and all that stuff. We have to head back and acknowledge a truism that everyone knows in the world. Anyone who watches this show, that's for sure, that Canadians are perhaps the dumbest people in the world, right? I've said it before. We talk about it all the time. Now, the reason is, and we'll talk about it, but we gotta acknowledge some of these Moscow time. This is not a complete Canadian edition, but I could make it so. I could remove 2 of these and we'd have a full-on Canadian version of Moscow time. But let's just get into it, right? So the Toronto Star is asking some questions about what's going on with climate change, right? So the headline is, Toronto Star, by the way, is the official newspaper of the stupidest people in Canada, in case you were wondering. So here it is. In Alberta, oil profits trump the need to confront climate change. Climate change is wreaking so much havoc across the country and around the world that it is now frightfully clear that we need to quickly slash carbon emissions that are causing Earth to heat up at such a rapid pace. You should see this lady too. Obviously not a scientist, right? She's like a humanities writer or something for the Toronto Star. It's obvious to everyone we need to slash emissions, guys. Everyone agrees, she says, right? So she goes on, the skies are filled with smoke, but the intentions of those who profit from petroleum have never been clearer, right? Because it's all about the greedy people. And they were asking in CBC News, right, if all the fires they had in Quebec this year, what caused those? They were wondering. They still don't know, right? So they're saying here, climate change worsened Quebec's wildfire conditions this year. Scientists say the record-setting wildfires that ripped through Quebec this summer were made more likely and more intense by human-caused climate change, according to new analysis by an international team of scientists. Whoa. International team. And if that's not enough, right, what's going on in Canada is happening in Hawaii too, right? They asked the mayor or the who is this guy? I don't even know who this guy is. Some guy, and he's got like sports ball stuff behind him, trying to give an interview what's going on in Hawaii. And they asked him, "Are you saying that climate change amplified the cost of human error?" Yes, 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 it did, he says. Right. So the human error involved in Hawaii, it's because the people who didn't release the water were stressed out, or, it's just people were stressed. So they couldn't react, right? Because they're so worried about climate change that, it intensified. It's not caused them, right? He's not saying that global warming caused the fires. What he's saying is it amplified the cost of human error. Okay. There's a difference, but of course the human error was amplified. It was intensified, right? Now in Canada, they're also asking, right? So Toronto Star again, right, asks, as COVID cases spike in Toronto, anxious business groups push government for early response. And how long does it take if you read the article to find out that the anxious business groups, right, the anxious business groups that are asking the government for an early response plan, how long before you read down the article that you find out that anxious business groups are like random people who have jobs? How long until you find that out when you read the article, right? It's in the first two paragraphs. Anxious business groups, also known as passersby, that have jobs. Anxious business groups, right? Yeah, people. Cherry-picked people. That's very good. Excellent. BBC asks, should we be worried about COVID this winter? Should we? You should see the comments to that. No, kill yourself. Move to Canada, commit MAID. And then finally, my conclusion here, this one's excellent. This is CBC News, right? They're really wondering, right? Can Trudeau government revive its old middle class message? Can they? And then they ask, the Trudeau government's re-election hopes may depend to a large extent on whether they can recapture the promise of economic security implicit in the middle class message that brought the Liberals to power in 2015. So they're wondering here, the news is wondering in Canada, can Canadians just fall in love with Trudeau again? What would it take? We don't know. So good on you, CBC. And if this doesn't prove that Canadians, so the reason why Canadians are the stupidest people in the world is because it's a per capita brainwashing to brainwashed game, right? So one of the things I've said for a long time is that while the United States has 10 times the population of Canada, right? It's about 10 times bigger population wise. The number of brainwashers there, you'd think they're the most, right? Because it's the most media and all that. But the thing is, each of these groups that are brainwashing in America have their counterpart in Canada mostly, right? Just like there's a McDonald's and then there's a McDonald's Canada, and then everything in Canada has its own version, its own head office. Even the propagandists, so all the think tanks, they often put someone on the Canadian file, right? And in the end, what you end up seeing is that Canadians are just outmatched. We just have way more people doing the same things that happen in the United States, but we're a bit more of a captured audience. So that's always been how I explain why Canadians are, in fact, the stupidest people in the world, because they're the most brainwashed and they have the most brainwashers per capita. It's not even close, right? The most propagandists. The situation in Australia and New Zealand is a little better because they don't get the spillover of American brainwashers. There's just more hand-to-hand combat in Canada. And that's what produces these results, right? That's what produces a population so vacuous, so stupid, so compliant, so ready to listen to any expert that tells them whatever else is going on. That's the reason why. And I've said that since before Bitcoin. I noticed it already when I worked in Parliament that there was not roughly the same amount of brainwashers in Canada and the United States. It's not even close, but the proportions are skewed so that Canada is just drowning in brainwashers more and psyops more than the United States, as if it's even possible. I mean, America, you'd think it's the world standard for brainwashing. It's just one of those things that Canada, there's a lot of advantages by being a hot dog stand next to a football stadium. And that's what Canada is in many ways, right? It's a hot dog stand next to a full football stadium. So I've often said, there's major advantages in your economy because there's people coming every day. You just got to sell hot dogs to a captive audience, right? But there is negative parts too, which is that all the US spillover can hit Canada in a disproportionate way, and we can even absorb all the U.S. brainwashing without even noticing the difference, right? So Canadians, you'll find the largest cases of Trump derangement syndrome are actually in Canada, from what I've seen, right? I've seen people in Canada that are so lost on the Trump question that they're, it's clear that they're just consuming American propaganda at a rate that even Americans couldn't sustain, like just force-fed, Trump stuff. So, but there is good news. There is real good news, right? Which is that Vivek has really begun to show us how to deal with these brainwashers. And I think it brings hope to Canada. I think Vivek is hope for Canada even, right? So the proof that you can have of how Vivek handled it is this new Caitlin Collins, whatever this interview that's going around, where Vivek is pushed on the 9/11 fake news story that's running around about him. So the fake news story is that Vivek said 9/11 was an inside job. Right. So did you say, and then they have audio clips, right? So the funny thing is they keep playing the audio clip where he says nothing of the sort. So they play it live, right? So you had this instance where Caitlin Collins is there and she's trying to do the serious face, when the journalists try to put their serious face on, like if they furrow their brow, like somehow we're going to take them more seriously. So she's sitting there trying to like intensify her furrowed brow. But here's where Vivek is the best. And here's what he's doing, what we talk about here all the time. He laughed at her. He just kept laughing at her, right? This is something Trump does poorly and Vivek does very well, right? Trump would jump into things and call her a name, right? Which is funny. I mean, it's always been funny, right? The one where he's got Katie Tur and she can't speak this is in the 2015 time, right? And he's flustering her. He's just giving her some jabs as an interview subject would to someone interviewing them. He's just like, roughing her up a bit, but she can't handle it. And she breaks down. He goes, okay, he starts saying, take a minute, get your thoughts together, right? That was good, but it's so confrontational and adversarial, and it's so, WWE and fun. No one can ever deny how fun the Trump stuff is. And it was always hilarious, but it didn't really land. The punches didn't land in the same way. It was just chaos, right? The person who was getting attacked by Trump could walk away and say, and find a ton of people saying, oh, you won that exchange, oh, he debased himself. Oh, he embarrassed himself. He's so rude. So there's all those possibilities. But what you saw with Vivek trying to deal with Caitlin Collins was a different animal altogether. This was laughter. This was mockery. And you could see her trying to furrow her brow and be more serious as he keeps just like, he can't stop laughing, right? Because she plays the video with him there. And the video shows clearly that he says nothing about inside job, nothing about it, right? All he says and all he's ever said is that we were lied to, right? We were not treated with the truth when it came to the 9/11 Commission, and simply put, a Saudi intelligence official was the chaperone of some of the people who crashed the airplanes, right? So what does that mean? That's all he's ever been asking, right? What's going on here, right? We were told Saudi and their intelligence services nothing to do with 9/11, the 9/11 Commission, the report, all of it said, no, don't look at Saudi. They're totally innocent. Don't sweat it. We find out that people on the actual payroll did this. Now, does everyone know bin Laden's actual family history, right? So bin Laden, his daddy, right, Mohammed bin Laden, what he did, amazing stuff, right? The world would be different if Osama bin Laden's dad and brother were still alive. Very interesting people, very interesting people. So Mohammed bin Laden worked for the Saud family, and he told them at the time that it was, so America came in. America spent 20 years looking for the oil in Saudi. So to say that we just went in and took it, right, the Americans, that was never the case. There were few people in the world who had the capacity to even find the oil back in the 19 teens and 20s. It was American engineers who found it. They found the mother lode, right? And the thing about the Saudi oil, in case you didn't know, it's not like the fracking thing where you need engineering to get it out. If you have not a paper straw, right, you needed the old-fashioned plastic straws. Not the paper straws, right? They won't do it. But a plastic straw, you poke it into the sand and you get a gush of oil, right? You just got to know where to put it. So Americans found it and then also brought the machinery and the engineering to get it out, right? So they brought the tractors, the dump trucks, the backhoes, the bulldozers. None of that stuff existed almost anywhere else in the world at the time. So America brought all that stuff over. Now, this is what Osama bin Laden's dad did. Osama bin Laden's dad simply told the Saud family, we can have the biggest construction company in the world if we just gave ourselves the contracts to exploit this stuff, and we'll buy all this stuff from America. So for a long time, the bin Laden family was the largest buyer of American construction equipment in the world. They bought all the tractors, bulldozers. I mean, they couldn't make them fast enough, right? So they brought all that in, and Mohammed bin Laden was the fella who actually built Saudi Arabia after on this one simple deal. He never said, I'm going to be an oil man. I'm not doing any of that stuff, right? And then he went around and rebuilt Muhammad. Muhammad had his own, I mean, the real Muhammad, right? The peace be to him, Muhammad guy. That Muhammad had his own mosque. So bin Laden's dad rebuilt that. He also rebuilt Mecca, right? So the whole thing, the bin Laden family touched and rebuilt the three holiest sites in the Islamic religion, right? So, and anyone who took the pilgrimage went to, because Muhammad bin Laden had the house, he built his house next to or near Muhammad's actual mosque. Anyone who went through on that pilgrimage would stop by if they were rich and powerful enough, right? So, so this, this system that they used over there was going on forever. And the bin Laden family, in the end, had to lend money to the Saud family. And they were actually the ones who encouraged them, when they lent the Saud family money, encouraged the Saud family to renegotiate the US royalty deal for oil, which is how we get into the 1970s and the oil troubles that America had with Saudi Arabia at the time. That was mostly on bin Laden's advice, right? So the question always remained, and if you didn't know this, when bin Laden was exiled to Somalia and Sudan, which was after he got home from Afghanistan in the early 90s, and when the United States came to Saudi Arabia for Operation Desert Storm in the 1991 Iraq War. At that time, what got bin Laden into trouble was he wasn't against American, like in general. What he was against is Saudi Arabia being so weak that they needed to call Americans to guard the Holy Land from heathen Iraqi soldiers who were there for oil and money. And he said, I've just created a force in Afghanistan. You don't need the Americans. We can do this. And that was, and then he criticized the Saud family, and he was in no position to do so. So he was exiled for those reasons. So, people say we don't know about bin Laden. Was he working with the Saudi government? Doesn't look like it. Honestly, it still, to me, doesn't look like it. But something was going on inside of the Saudi government that we still to this day don't understand. Right now, I'm sure there's no unanimity on the Saudi side, right? I bet you there was people, just like in bin Laden's own family. His older brother was the one who recruited Osama into the operation. His older brother was as pro-America, anti-communist as anyone you'll ever find. He lived on an airplane and just flew to America. Ray-Ban guy, was having a great American life. He was nothing like his brother, nothing. He was the oldest. So Muhammad Jr., right, the first of the boys, was by far the most favored by the patriarch and was supposed to be the person in charge of everything. Osama was way more religious and all those things compared to the brother. History didn't work out that way. Anyway, the point is what Vivek did, the blueprint that he showed, laughing at this, the nuance, the making the actual story about the government lying to us, and not about like, oh, you believe that the government was, there was a conspiracy theory where they're in on it, because they're trying this conspiracy theory that they use on RFK to go after Vivek as well. But it ain't going to work on either of them, I don't think. Remember what I said about RFK as well, right? That pinning him with the conspiracy theory label is probably the best thing we could ask for if you are a RFK fan. Because remember, calling him a conspiracy theorist, right? Of all the people in the world that have questions and are allowed to have questions about what happened, right? His father was killed by the CIA. His uncle was killed by the CIA, and his whole life was ruined. Right now, I'm sure he loves his life and has come to terms with his past. But he instantly became a heroin addict after they killed his dad. Like, could you imagine the trouble he's been through? A heroin addict, right? So the idea that he is not allowed to ask questions, or else he's called a conspiracy theorist, was always a perfect setup for RFK to go forward, because it just brings attention. And now that they're going with the same approach to Vivek, he showed the actual blueprint on how to deal with these people. He came out and literally just laughed. He just laughed. That's the way to do it. And you know, the line that he came up with that I thought was amazing, right? So first of all, he said, you guys, you know, you're going to treat me the same way you tried with Trump last year. You're just going to lie, right? But he gave a reason why he's different than Trump. And I agree 100% with this. And it's something that really appeals to me. And again, I think I'm more a Vivek supporter than a Trump supporter at this point, right? I really believe that. We'll talk about what's going on tonight as well, because I think there is sort of a little poll happening in a way tonight, and we'll get to that, right? A straw poll, not a real poll, but I think you're going to see a surprise. So Vivek, you know, all these people writing all. Let me just read some of the headlines too that people have written about him, right? Vivek Ramaswamy, this is from The Atlantic, falsely claims The Atlantic misquoted him about 9/11 on January 6th. Here is the unedited audio and a transcript of his exchange, right? And by the way, the video, I forgot to tell you, the video they keep showing, it's the best. It's with Alex Stein. You know who Alex Stein is? He's the guy who does all, like, he's great. He's one of the funniest people going. He single-handedly is reinventing the nighttime news, like the Jon Stewart thing. He's the guy who first got attention by going to the town hall meetings and talking about how much trouble it is because his wife's boyfriend, and he just goes on all of these things, and people freak out, right? Because he does these prank public speaking things. He did one the other day where he put like the you know, sadomasochistic sex domination toys, and went and gave a speech at one of these things. They tried to suppress him. He's the one who goes and like he'll run right head first into these Antifa crowds and go wild with them. Like, I mean, a real comedian. So all these interviews that they're citing and these audio clips of Vivek, they're all with Alex Stein, and it's all like comedic and to begin with. So they're like trying to show these videos of Vivek with an actual comedian, like a politically engaged comedian, but with an actual comedian. And they're trying to say, oh, what did you say? Right. So remember, all of these ones are with Alex Stein. So first of all, I don't think they understand that the guy is joking, right? But anyway. Multiple articles on The Atlantic, right? Vivek Ramaswamy has emerged as the most charismatic speaker of the 2024 presidential election race. But what is he actually saying, right? And it's all conspiracy theory stuff and this and that. And then, you know, the Caitlin Collins. Here's her. She's retweeting the segment where he's laughing at her. And I still think she doesn't understand that in the video that she's retweeting, he never says what she accuses him of saying, right? He never says ever that 9/11 was an inside job. All he says every single time, while laughing at her and saying, you know, you're really a moron. Everything he says every time is, no, I just have questions about what happened with the Saudis. And we know through declassified documents and from a court case that's happening right now in New York, because Americans are suing the Saudi government for compensation for their role in this, right? So there is like a question of responsibility and who's doing it and these things. So he tries to do this serious face, you know, and he's laughing at her. So it's great. But here's his actual line, and here's what I want to mention, right? And this is where he is better than Trump. And that takes a lot for me to say, because as you know, I love Donald Trump. I love him. Right. I think he's the most persuasive person. But remember what he said even about what he offers above Donald Trump. He goes, I have all the same policies, but I don't create the mental illness in the other people. Right. I don't provoke the anti-Trump derangement syndrome thing. Right now, you know, to argue with Vivek for a second, of course, most of anti-Trump and Trump derangement syndrome is from the brainwashing. Right. So it's not just Trump, but Trump has that effect, right? I've admitted it. Everyone should admit it. Trump is a singular person and has, no matter what you think about him, an expensive cost of operation because he's wild. We love him, but he's wild. He costs a lot. Lost me friends, lost probably anyone else who likes him friends, right? I'm okay with that. Like, that's not the end of my life. But there's a cost to supporting Trump, right? The cost isn't there with Vivek. And he said it. But here's the quote that I wanted to get to that I like. And when he's laughing her off, right? Look at how well he puts this. He goes, and he's explaining the difference between his approach to Trump's. And he says, principles and conviction, not vengeance and grievance. Really good stuff, right? Now, love the Trump fights back stuff. Love it. It was the right thing in 2015. It was the right thing in 2016. It was the right thing to dislodge the cork we had in unleashing reality into the scripted version of the fake prison of two ideas that we live in. And he did such a great job, Trump, doing that we are now in a position where we can do things differently and a little more magnanimously, I guess you could say, right? Which I love. But here's the thing, right? And you get people who I agree with, like War Clandestine, because tonight, here's the straw poll that I wanted to mention, right? Here's the straw poll thing that I wanted to mention. Just wanted before I get to the straw poll thing, the other people that are signing up for Vivek is a fake news spreader, Semaphore, which I've already discounted as a news source. I've already mentioned all that to you guys, right? We gave them a shot, right? We said this might be different. They're not. They're a scam. One of their writers says your interview was recorded and fact-checked, as if Semaphore's fact-checking is somehow good, right? It's obviously not. So that's just another group. So, but here's what's happening tonight, and this comes from Charlie Kirk, right? Who's a big Republican sort of guy. War Clandestine, people that I normally would agree with, but here's what they say. Bakari Sellers on CNN says nobody will watch Tucker Carlson's interview with Trump. Just for the record, Donald Trump's counter programming is horrible. I don't think anybody is going to be watching Tucker Carlson on Twitter or X. And he asked, what will you be watching? So people saying that no one's watching, Trump and Tucker. War Clandestine saying the same thing here. The legacy MSM are shitting bricks right now because they know that Trump and Tucker's numbers are going to dwarf the GOP debate. This will further solidify the MSM are obsolete and that they've lost control of public perception. X is the future of media. The TV is dead. Now, I agree with everything they're saying, right? Everything they're saying, right? It's true. We talk about it all the time. The idea that Tucker's numbers on Fox are lower than what he does alone. I absolutely think he's a much better a much better show now that he's on his own. Tucker's show is much better on his own. But here's the thing. I'm personally going to watch the GOP debates. And I think a lot of people are. Why? Vivek. Only Vivek. It's just because of Vivek, right? I'm more interested in how Vivek will do live than I am in how Trump will do in an interview I've seen before. We know what he's going to say. 2020 election, they screwed me. Great. Yeah. Again, love Trump. We'll always love him. I'll watch the interview. I won't watch it live. Now, I do believe what everyone is saying here is correct, right? The Twitter, X, the future of media. We'll be talking about Noster at the top of this hour. I've got to go do a Bitcoin Magazine Spaces at 9 a.m. Eastern. So we all are going to go a little shorter today, by the way, everyone. I'll just let you know now. So I have time to do the turnaround. We'll be talking about Noster and the sort of startup space and entrepreneurship and Bitcoin. And it'll be great stuff. So come join us, right? Going to be fun. But the idea here, I agree with in principle. X, future, Tucker, future, independent journalists, future, mainstream media, brainwashing, terrible, going away. But tonight anyway, right? Despite all of that, I will, because of my interest in Vivek, because remember, I'm a one-issue candidate, right? I'm only supporting the Bitcoin candidates, and those are RFK and Vivek. And so because I support both of those candidates, of course I'm going to watch. Now, the Trump thing is going to be fun. We're going to watch it. But my money is on the big numbers. Now, we're not going to be able to see, we're not, everyone's going to lie about their numbers. And, even Tucker's numbers on Twitter are more perception is reality. How many watch it straight through? We don't know, right? Those are not for us. This is all marketing stuff, and that's the world we live in. So, but this example that Vivek is setting for us on how to deal with fake news, and he's modeling it for all of us to learn. It is what we've been talking about. It's laughing at them. It's humor. Now, Cernovich has actually come out with, I think, one of the better like implementations you could use, and I'll read it. So this is about the COVID, all this Alex Jones stuff. COVID is back. It's what we read in the Moscow Time today. The protocols are going to come in the autumn. What are we all going to do? And it looks like, I said a few days ago, I've seen a lot more here in Montreal. I know someone in the comments said they're not seeing in the rest of Canada. It's around now. I mean, there's people plugged right in, right? They got told masks a week ago and boom, right on. All over the place, right? Again, Canadians, like, what do you expect, right? They're in, and it's like black flies here, the brainwashers. They're everywhere, right? There's just everywhere. So per capita, that's why I have sympathy for the Canadians. They're more brainwashed per capita than the Americans. Tough to say. But here's what Cernovich has in mind, right? So this is about everyone and what's going on with the COVID stuff and why it's different this time, right? So here's what he says. Personally, I'm going to do more. He says, I will ask people if they're afraid of COVID, which I think is one of the better responses, right? Are you, and I did that a lot in the early days. Like I would tell people I'm not risk managing COVID. Like I would say that in the summer of 2020, that's how I was expressing it, right? I'm not risk managing. I'll risk manage other people. I'll help other people is what I said, but I personally don't try to limit my exposure, and I'm not stressed out about it. And I would tell that to children because children were always amped up. I had children in my own family. Like part of my family helped, run the Ontario school lockdown. They were like always people on TV, wear your mask and all this. Yeah, my own family, guys. What are you going to do? So I would tell the kids because the kids would be like, they wouldn't even go outside without their masks. And they say, you don't wear a mask. I said, well, I'm not afraid of COVID. Right? Oh, Brian. Yeah. We forgot about our actual favorite candidate, right? Forget everything I just said. It is all about Biden, Fetterman, 2024, right? Vivek and RFK. Let's go Biden and Fetterman. We love it. So he says, I will ask people, this is Cernovich, I will ask people if they're afraid of COVID. If a kid is masked, I'll say something. They are going to get the medicine they gave everyone else back. And I think that's all it is. It's the same slight uncomfortable, not bullying, but the way you were always asked, are you afraid of the shot? Are you afraid of the shot? Like, are you making your decisions out of fear? And I used to always say, who isn't making their decisions in COVID out of fear? Right? Either fear of not getting vaxxed, fear of getting vaxxed, fear of the virus. It was all fear. The whole thing was fear on every angle. And whatever fear you had was what was motivating people. But I didn't find the people who disagreed with the COVID stuff did a good job of pushing back on that. And because, even like people like myself, people like Cernovich, we sort of let it go and just managed ourselves, right? I think it will be different this time. As Daniel says, this would be great, right? If it's Ukraine flag masks. We didn't have that before, right? It would be great if we get some Ukraine flag masks this time. That would really be, it's like when you see in people's bios, right? That you can basically discount anyone who has a Ukraine flag and a BLM thing and in their bios, he, him, Ukraine flag, vaccine, done, right? Automatic block. I wish there was an automatic block for these. I wish you can algorithmically block people who have a Ukrainian flag in their bio because that's it. You don't have to keep talking to them, right? There's not much going on there. So that's what we're seeing over there. And, there's Cernovich doing this. You get also, Dana White, the fella from UFC, and here's where you're starting to see a lot of change in the way we handle this stuff. Now, I understand people had clear small government points of view before. They were able to articulate what small government means. They were able to articulate things like what Cernovich is not inventing "you're afraid of COVID" type talking points, but he's showing an iteration and a progress and using that as a way to push the public narrative along. But Dana White here offers something in the same line. So in the same way that Vivek is sort of pushing us on how to deal with fake news, Cernovich is giving people advice on how to manage individuals and systems and how to manage your own life when you interact with these people. And now Dana White is kind of gathering it all together here, right? And giving a point of view that I don't think would have hit as hard pre-COVID as it does now. And this is what he says. All you young people that are watching this right now, you don't want anything from the government. The only thing you want from the government is for them to stay out of your business. If you think the government is ever going to take care of you and make all of your dreams come true, you are out of your mind. And now, again, this exact statement could have existed 3 years ago, and a small portion of the population would have gone, wow, that's deep and wise. After COVID and everything we've seen in the past few years, the size of the audience that would be receptive to this message is through the roof. It's through the roof now, right? It's the same thing that you see when Trump attends UFC and they love him, right? That was impossible to imagine in that iteration just a few years ago, right? Even in that crowd, there would have been some hesitation. Oh, what are people going to say if I like this guy and all these things? So the degree to which things have changed so quickly, right? And the degree to which the media hasn't even understood how things are changing, I think sets up this conversation that we're seeing now about BRICS and what's going on, right? So while they're worried about 9/11 and what Vivek did and didn't say and all of these other things, right? Cool. Johnny Rico knows the old, yeah, Dana White, I think, has a big role to play in this, Johnny. That's a great connection to have, man, you know, a good connection to have. So, so what we're seeing in terms of the US media being able to, fulfill their mandate, let's say, of brainwashing people while also trying to keep people informed about what's actually gone on in the world is so out of balance that while they're spending all this time with the same old tricks and we're learning how to manipulate and counter program those tricks back, the real issues, which they've ignored for a generation now, are bubbling up. And that's the BRICS thing, right? So the BRICS thing has started, right? The meeting is on. We had Xi arrive. We've seen some of the blueprints. It looks like a payment scheme or something. It looks kind of like a SWIFT or a settlement network, which is what we said. We said it would look a little bit settlement-y. Whether or not there's a shitcoin involved or not, we still don't know. But the point is, as this is going on, you get this kind of stuff being expressed in public. And this is from Xi himself. Now, remember, I'm no fan of President Xi of China, okay? I love the Chinese people. I love the potential for China. I love and admire what they've achieved until now. I'm so happy they're not the shithole of the world with the most destitute people on the planet, which they were 100 years ago, right? Just a terrible tragedy what happened as that empire collapsed. I love their train network, sad about the slaves and all the other stuff, but it's hard to really think in terms of China in a way that we understand what's going on there well, because we've been so brainwashed in America. You know, you think of China and the CCP as the most totalitarian thing. You know, I've heard if you go to China today, you don't see anything about social credit system. There's no police harassing you if you're traveling through the country. In some ways, it's more free than America, right? I'm happy to say that at this point. So here's what he says, right? So he gave a big speech on BRICS and what's going to happen. He says, we need to promote development and prosperity for all. Many emerging markets have come to what they are today after shaking off the yoke of colonialism. With perseverance, hard work, and huge sacrifices, we succeeded in gaining independence and have been exploring development paths suited to our national conditions. Everything we do is to better the lives of our people. But some country, obsessed with maintaining its hegemony, has gone out of its way to cripple these emerging marketplaces. Whoever is developing fast becomes its target of containment. Whoever is catching up becomes its target of obstruction. But this is futile, as I have said more than once, that blowing out others' lamp will not bring light to oneself. Right now, pretty wise stuff from Xi, right? You got to give him some credit, right? He's not an idiot. And of all the things he is, he's not an idiot. And in this case, I think he's put it perfectly, right? all these countries that are expressing their desire for something else simply don't want to run cover any longer for American media and for the Federal Reserve or the American military or any of these instances, right? There is an appetite now, and countries have expressed it openly, that they do not want to be bound by the US dollar when it comes to foreign trade and settlement and things like that. And because that's out there, because the media has not covered any of it, this is from a newsman, right? This is what they spent their entire show on last night. We've got BRICS meeting right now, right? We've got blueprints coming out for everyone to manage and counter program the psyops. There's all kinds of stuff going on. And they spent the entire 5 p.m. hour yesterday talking about Donald Trump on CNN, the entire hour, right? They didn't offer with only one diversion for a segment on Ukraine, one. And it was just like, war, we'll see what happens, right? Not like, oh, we're losing or anything like that, right? No, nothing. And then this is even more damning. Not a single mention of the 850 people still missing in Hawaii. Now, we understand a little more about what's happening with 850 million people in Hawaii, right? We know that the reason why no one is wondering where this person is and that person is because it's probably whole families. It's probably whole families, right? So, so they're not preparing America for what's actually coming, right? Not even coming close. And Glenn Greenwald says it here. He says, for the vast bulk of the U.S. corporate media, there's no sense that journalism is supposed to be about adversarially scrutinizing what the current president and government are doing. 3 years into the Biden presidency, they barely mention Biden and still fixate on Trump. In the same way that in 2020, January, no one in Congress in DC was talking about COVID. We knew in New York City COVID was happening, right? We knew in January 2020, we all knew. I tell people all the time, you could not take a subway in January 2020 in New York City with a sniffle. You'd been punched in the face because of COVID. We knew you couldn't just go on the subway sick, right? You'd get punched out. So we knew this was here. We knew what was going on. And when we saw the impeachment of Trump, and that's all they wanted to talk about, we were like, well, this is probably misappropriating attention span. And it didn't make as much of a difference because everyone got caught up in the calamity that was COVID response in March 2020. But with the BRICS thing, there's no such escape valve. There's no such confusing element coming, right? It's people are expressing a will to change the system. Yellen was unsuccessful in getting other countries to buy more U.S. debt. They sent Yellen to stop this from happening. They sent Yellen. Yellen, okay? Yellen and Blinken, right? What are you doing if you're failing? If it's not working out for you, right? You're yelling and you're blinking, right? While they're Biden time. It's the best. I can't believe these three names have come together. Biden, Blinken, and Yellen. It's just a mentally handicapped negotiator. It's the best. So, none of this stuff is being brought up to the American people. They're going to have a hard lesson about what money is, what international economy is, and they're unprepared for it. And so, people ask me all the time, right? What's the crash going to feel like and look like? How do you prepare? I don't know any of those answers. All I know is I've gone through most of the trouble myself. I'm not overly exposed to it. Like, if real estate tanks, I'm not going to be crying. Like, I own a beautiful farm that I didn't pay too much for, and I would never have paid too much for it, and I can feed myself with it, and I'm not like counting real estate holdings to keep me wealthy and all of these things, right? So my wife and I regularly shop at secondhand stores and all those adjustments that we don't drive a fancy car, right? All the things you need to do to not get pinched in these instances, we've already done. I didn't, start a wild lifestyle in the last bull run. I sort of just waited and knowing that it was going to crash again and knowing we were not done with cycles and stuff like that. So here we are, right? A huge portion of the population still thinks it's 2013, and they're about to find out it isn't, and that's going to be tough, but not for us. And the more people we have like Vivek modeling how to manage the brainwashers publicly, the more people we have like Cernovich helping model how we should interact with covidians, And the more we have Bitcoiners modeling how to manage finance, and you're going to have a great example, right? I was explaining everything about preparing and corporate and intellectual capacity. Well, Barstool Media with the Dave Portnoy thing, right? Dave Portnoy has been a speaker at our shows. He was famously not into Bitcoin, and then he sold, and then he's the salad hands and the paper hands and all those memes. Well, he took over his old company, Barstool Sports, and he says now that he's definitely going to be adding Bitcoin to his balance sheet, right? So this is an example of modeling how corporate behavior is going to be going forward to people like Dave Portnoy, who understand exactly how the fake news cycle works. He understands it exactly, right? He has been subjected to the ridiculousness of fake news on a number of occasions, and is doing fine now to talk about it. All right, so I'm gonna have to leave real soon. Let me see some of these comments. That's what we got today. USA Inc. BRICed. Basically not going to be able to navigate what's going on, right? All right, let's see what's going on. Good morning, everyone. Gatherings. One Middle East show. Should be 2024, Austin. I'm keen on doing it in Tunisia, in Tunis. I'd go with Morocco. Dubai, of course. I'm a fan, but trying to mix it up. Everyone always goes to Dubai, so I'm thinking Tunisia. Close for lots of people, and in the ruins of Carthage, there is a gorgeous Four Seasons for cheap. For cheap. $200 a night or something for a Four Seasons. That's my Canadian coming through. We like our Four Seasons. Good morning, Bitcoiners. I talk about how stupid Canadians are all the time, but they do some stuff great, right? Their hospitality industry is great. It's better than the Americans. The truth isn't easy for some people. Not at all, Catacombs. Good morning, Bitcoin fam. Tommy with advice. You don't want to know who is responsible for now. You need to say, yeah, exactly. You don't want to know who's responsible. Yeah. It ain't good. It ain't good. Walking my kid home from school when masks were a thing. We found a mask on the road with the word ball gag when written. All right. Ukrainian flaggers make it easy to yeah, no kidding. I don't even engage. I know all their talking points before they speak. Absolutely. Yeah, they're the most programmed people going, right? Maui is 9/11 multiplied by Pearl Harbor. Ouch. Yeah. Terrible. Biden, Yellen, and Blinken. Yeah. Old Toyotas. Yeah, I've told this joke before, Brian. So I'm because I've been through a couple market cycles now, I'm like a high rolling Bitcoiner. So I drive an 05 Lexus GX470, the big Land Cruiser thing, the one they run around the deserts in the Middle East and all that. It's a great car. But I also bought, because I had to scalp a little off the top at the top of the 2021 market. So I bought an 08 Toyota Solara convertible to cruise around. So I'm a little bit of a show off. All right, I'm a little bit of a show off, right? And my policy is I never buy cars from after the government took ownership of the car companies. So the 08 meltdown, right? I only buy cars from before the government and their stupid aluminum plastic parts. Hate them. All right, team. I think a real estate in Herlana in China. Oh yeah, no. But Muslim Bitcoiner, they had no choice, right? They're not allowed to invest in other things. So there you go. All right, team. I got to go get ready for the spaces. I'll see you tomorrow. Enjoy your day. I'm going to be watching both. We'll be talking about Vivek and Trump tomorrow, so there'll be lots to talk about. I'm sure the Trump thing's going to be good. I'm just telling you, everyone's so sure Fox isn't going to get good ratings tonight. The straw poll part of it is, I think more and more people are like me in that they're saying, I honestly think Vivek could beat Trump. I do. I think he could beat him. Now, again, we love Trump, right? We're happy that there's enough people who are not afraid and cowed by these people. So we'll always love Trump. They should build statues to him in the future. All right. Peace. See you.